So, good afternoon, everyone. We have five students, three students, but this is the usual pattern actually. We don't get many because it is online. So, today we have Dr. Sarita Nandmeher, who will be talking about East Asian diaspora. You all know East Asian diaspora is also very important component of diaspora, and we will be talking on that. Before that, I want to introduce herself. She is the assistant professor at Amity University now, and she has been working on diaspora for a long time. I know Sarita for last at least 5 to 6 years, and she is also associated with many research institutes within India and abroad, including some of the top institutes in Indonesia and within India, JNU and Delhi University. So with this brief introduction, I'll request Dr. Sarita to talk on this present topic, East Asian diaspora. Over to you. We have so many important people here who happen to be our students. I'll just tell you, Swadesh is heading one NGO, Prabhasi Mitra, which is one of the leading NGO in Andhra Pradesh. And Vijaya is located in Kuwait, and she is very much, in the activist type and taking care of Indian community interest in Kuwait. And many other, Nirmal is there, few more may join. So I think we'll start now.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you so much for the brief introduction. How many minutes I have for this?
Maybe 40 minutes and question answer.
Okay. Yeah, 40 minutes are enough. So let's just start with this. So today we are discussing about the East Asian diaspora, and it is one of the unit from this PG diploma course on migration and diaspora, and you all are enrolled, I think, in this course, as I know. So basically in this topic, I discussed and I include mostly the 5 most important countries from the East Asian region, that is China, Korea, Philippines, Japan, and Vietnam. So today we will discuss on these countries, their little bit on their historical background, how they've been migrated, and how they are contributing into their country in the development resources, or in the remittances, in economics and culture, and in every other sectors as well. But mostly because as we all know that in the 21st century, which already declared the Asian century, so because of that, the most economic advance which is made by the Asian countries, including East Asia. So for instance, like if I'll say the rise of China, which is a very crucial development in global politics, and China is rising the manufacturing capabilities and technological advancement, especially from last few decades. So that also made a very big shift into the international politics, and not just in the politics, but it made a very different stage, or create a very different stage in the Europe and between the United States, in between the Asian countries as well. So I will just start beginning with a brief introduction about these countries. As I already mentioned that this topic we are going to discuss today is on the East Asian diaspora, and I focused on the 5 countries, which is China, Korea, Philippines, Japan, and Vietnam. Although there is Hong Kong, Macau, they are also there. But these 5 countries, they made a very important influence on the diaspora. And the Chinese diaspora, it's huge. So we would like to discuss, I would like to discuss on a little bit about the benefits from what benefits their diasporas are taking from their home country, like their economy, their remittances, and it is also creating an important factor, that is a soft power through their cultural and civilizational exchange, especially from the host countries. Now, their presence, especially at the global platform, which like in the United Nations, World Trade Organization, they are also very helpful and helping these countries to strengthen their presence, especially in the host countries and globally as well. So, before going into that, these sub-regions is widely diverse in terms of culture, people, their ethnicity, their language, their food habits. We all know about the Korean food culture, their movies, their videos, and everything is like their pop music. It's very popular these days. So their lifestyles is also even shared on the world stage, and people are adopting even that way. But even that, the political setup is also very much influenced. Now, the East Asian diaspora has one of the largest overseas population, which is settled on a permanent and temporary basis, which includes the overseas migration, or you can say the overseas immigration to the Americas, like United States of America, the Canada, and the South America, and in the Europe and their neighboring countries in Asia. Now, on the larger scale, immigration from the East Asia took place after the end of the Second World War in 1945. And this immigration, which in cases from the East Asia to the Americas, which resulted from the political instability and their economic downfall after the Second World War, and the ethnic tension, which also created a situation to migrate these people, these citizens from their home country to the host country. And now during the 1960s and 70s, the Vietnam War, which was resulted, especially a massive number of political refugees who sought political asylum in the United States of America, in Brazil, in Mexico, in Canada, Japan. And it also a direct and indirect role which is East Asian countries played in the Second World War, that their association with the two blocs, we all know about the America and the Soviet Union, they attracted local population to move to these countries and settle there on a temporary basis. But before going into that, I would like to also give a small definition about diaspora, because we are discussing East Asian country and their diaspora on the world stage. So the immigration from home to the host is a standard definition basically. But while homes, their challenge is push people to settle in the host countries. Now, these traditional values which create the intercultural or interracial societies in the host country. Now, this helps the diaspora to maintain that connection, especially on the social and cultural, religious, and marital values of their homeland. Now, the East Asian diaspora has built an overseas community. There is a rise of hybrid culture, which is very popular among the fourth and fifth generation of the diaspora communities, and the Asian diaspora has proved to be like a connectivity or like a network in providing these information, and they gain the financial opportunities in trade and investment. Now, in this light, this present section or the coming section we are going to discuss will give a historical background, a little historical background about their contribution, about these East Asian diaspora, their contribution to the home country, especially on the economic sphere. Now, this East Asian diaspora, which is already we discussed like 5 most important countries, this includes the Europeans and now I'm directly jumping into the Chinese diaspora because this is very important and very large diaspora we have seen so far, but now the Indians are there. So by the definition, the Chinese diaspora, which refers to anyone who personally or whose ancestor migrated from China to a foreign country within and beyond Asia, and how and who now consider himself and herself as a citizen or a permanent resident, especially in the host country. But these Chinese diaspora, they also known as a overseas Chinese, especially is the third largest diaspora now in the world level. And this number is already mentioned in the international migration stock, and you can check these facts on the United Nations document. And now keeping it very a little simplified way, these Chinese languages and the word which is coming for these Chinese diaspora, that is from Hakyu, that is a translated Chinese word from the origin from their ancestrally residing, which is who is living outside the mainland of China and Taiwan, Macau, and Hong Kong. So this word Hakkai, which is translated from that. Now these Chinese people of Han, you can say, these ethnic identity account almost 93% of the Chinese population, and they are also accounted for a largest ethnic group which is residing overseas from the China. Now, historically, these economic and religious factors have been the primary motivator for these Chinese people to go abroad. And the forced migration, especially on the basis of religion, like Buddhist pilgrims, there were the central and the southern and the eastern areas. That was a very good illustration of a forced migration in China. And in China, like economic changes, they're particularly in opening up the policy, which was begun in the 1970, they have resulted in the continuous growth. But this growth, which was resulted a significant change in many aspects of the society, that was labor flexibility, the privatization. This resulted the number of unemployment worker which was unable to absorbed by the internal market. But for instance, like rural urban migration, that wealth polarization, and this was resulting the expansion and the gap between the affluents and the poor, which are the critical variables, especially in the migration. Now, what the result they gave? They gave that the individual migrants to improve their quality of life, such as their social services, their infrastructure, their wealth, their health, and still they must continuously be absorbed into these new communities. But now in 2010, these Chinese diaspora estimated like 43 million Chinese, which were originated from origin people, like from 148 countries, And with the long tradition of immigration, they oversee the Chinese, which were those who were already settled mainly in the Asian countries, especially in East Asian countries. For example, like in Singapore. Now, before the Cultural Revolution in China in 1950s, the many Chinese population, they immigrated within Asia. Now, with the economic reforms in the 1970s, the Chinese people began to migrate to the North America, Europe, and Australia as well. Now, these industrial countries, they shorted the labor, and you must be hearing these days even it's too much into the news and into the social media that if you want to migrate, if you want to work in the abroad, so they always come with the news there is a shortage of labor. So the same thing was happened. There was a shortage of labor in those countries, and these Chinese people, they migrated themselves into the industrial countries, especially because of that shortage of labor, and especially the unskilled who been the unemployed or employed in the on the lower salaries. And these Chinese migrants readily filled such demand, which rising from the needy countries or the countries who are open up to welcome these migrants to work in their industries and other sectors as well. Now, these Chinese diaspora, they present the generation which is primarily engaged in the economic, information, and technology, especially in investment, and in the educational activities, especially in the host countries. And I can give you an example on that. I think 33% of the Chinese diaspora who is enrolled in the American universities. So they are also actively participated in the educational sector, even from these host countries. Now, historically, we were talking about that. So the Chinese immigrations, their overseas settlement, that can be divided into the 4 phases. Now, what are these 4 phases? The first phase was the Chinese immigrants found between the Tang and Ming dynasty. Now, these Chinese called considered as a 17th and the 16th century, 7th and 16th century. Now, some pieces of this evidence from these dynasties suggested that the Chinese immigration in the earlier century, but there was no evidence or there was no proof of their settlement. Now, these migrants, they were mainly the Buddhist immigrants who visited Japan and India and Indonesia for their pilgrims because of their Buddhist culture, their Buddhist activities they were doing. Now, for instance, like Faxian, which is a well-known Chinese Buddhist monk who came to India into the 3rd century for pilgrimage. Now, into the first page, the overseas Chinese, they went to the West Asia for trading purpose along with the ancient Silk Route. And now coming to the second portion of that phase, that is the 17th and the 19th century, these Chinese traders, these were the artisans, they were the miners, they were the paid overseas visitors. They were primarily limited within the Asia, especially in the Philippines and the countries like Java, Sumatra, Thailand, Malay. And the third important phase was 1910 to 1960. That was considered as an industrial revolution, which played an essential role to migrate these Chinese immigrants, especially. Now, which in that, the Asia allowed the Chinese trade and the business community to expand its outreach on a global scale. And the latest destination, if you'll say, was the Australia, New Zealand, the South Pacific Islands, even including Fiji, Hawaii, or you can Mauritius, Reunion. All of these are very small island. There is already a very dominated diaspora is working there, but still these were the examples. Even those who expand because of this industrial revolution to migrate these Chinese diaspora into these countries, especially now including the United States, the Canada, even the Mexico and Peru from these countries. Now come to the fourth phase, which was the, I think personally, I'll see that there was a globalization period, especially from the post 1960s. Yes, and this uh, globalization, not just due to the Asian people, even into the international world stage, people were migrating from here to there, and this consider as a globalization's umbrella, or you can see the global connectivity. And these new cities and centers, especially the developed societies, they become the new destination for these diasporas, especially United States, Canada, and Australia. And there was a very significant change even into the Chinese diaspora and their settlement into these countries. Now, there is also a report on their diaspora and their migration into these countries, but there are top 4 destinations from these Chinese residing who are residing in overseas. That was including the Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and the United States, especially in 2010. And they estimated at least 65% of the overseas Chinese, which is residing in these countries. Now, because that was a very small historical background about these, their immigration to the different countries, to the host countries. Now, what is the economic engagement from these Chinese diaspora they are contributing, especially? Now, these Chinese diaspora, they are contributing especially into the development of the Chinese economy, which is over the decade, the Chinese community they residing have invested in China. And it is estimated that the Chinese diaspora living in Hong Kong and Macau, that China has been administrating since 1994, 1997 and 1999 are among the top investors in China. And these Chinese diaspora in Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia, Singapore, South Africa, Europe, USA, and other major investors, they become the home for the economy. And it is important to note that FDI is often seen as a potential indicator always to show these home economy and their development and their growth in the name of success. Now, the other side of the economic benefit, which includes the developing an overseas business community from China, which was strategically essential region like Africa and in Asia. These regions are resourceful, geopolitically critical, and significant even for the investment purpose. But another important part is their cultural engagement. The cultural spread, that the Chinese culture, which is widespread, especially because of these Chinese diaspora across the world, and especially the Chinese cuisine are very famous globally. We all aware of that. Now, followed by the Chinatown. This word, even the Chinatown, that is a common sight, or especially to see almost in every metropolitan city. You can take any country like United States, United Kingdom, Singapore, Australia, anywhere, even in India. And other where these Chinese diaspora has established their businesses, their houses, their restaurants, and now they are even residential of that complex. They have also attempted to create a homogeneous society, especially in the overseas, that facilitated the matrimonial culture, marriage, celebration. Now, the diaspora has also helped to put Chinese philosophy like Confucianism on the world map. And the official Chinese language, which is Mandarin, and this language is, I think, is teaching in every single institute in all over the world. And the opening of this culture and this center, this Confucius cultural center across the world is very prompting to the Chinese culture and their languages. But there is another part, especially in the international politics, that is a diplomatic success. And this diplomatic success was a public diplomacy, if you'll say, which considered as a silent but most effective, especially in maintaining the bilateral and the multilateral relations, or you can say the interactions. And it also helped China to gain the leverage on the international politics. And it also influenced the international organizations on decision making for the country or to in their favor. Now, for instance, like Singapore has a large Chinese diaspora which involved in the political sphere and held important position in the government, which is estimated at least that 70% of the population of the Chinese origin, by their ancestors, by their belongings, by their culture, they are there. Now, Singapore has the politicians of Chinese origin, and they held an important position as a prime minister. For example, we also have nowadays, and it was there even from the historical perspective, or you can see the time memorial, like in the United States, there are very important positions where the Indian diaspora is keeping or achieving, or they are in that positions. So from this diplomatic perspective, it always a beneficial for the particular country to maintain the business with that country or to grow the diplomatic cloth, especially. So there are many examples. If you'll take Indonesia, even for the example of keeping this diaspora or diplomatic success for the Chinese diaspora in this country is very high. If you'll visit one day to Indonesia, because I have experienced that, the Chinese culture, their significance, their diaspora, their work culture, they are also there in the industrialization, in the food culture. They are too much dominated even nowadays. So quickly, because we have only 40 minutes and we have to discuss the 5 diasporas. So I am jumping onto the Korean diaspora now. The Korean diaspora is again the second most, I will say now, if in comparison to other diasporas, is very, very influential. And the Korean diaspora basically, although refers from the ethnic Koreans who have immigrated overseas and settled there on a very short and a long term of basis, that was you can say the economical or the for the educational purpose or for the political reason. But these Koreans has a very long history of war, especially this disintegration into the two Koreas, which now have like South Korea and North Korea. And after the World War II, that happened basically. And after the Korean War in 1953, this Korea was divided into these two nations. Now, meanwhile, what happened? The post-Korean War in 1953, the Korea divided into two nations, but the South Korea has been identified as Korea. Like since their partition, the political and the military environment between the two Koreas has been tense and wars like. But these wars like tension between them have contributed to the Koreans who were living overseas or migrated since 1950s. Now, however, the modern history of this Korean diaspora began with immigration to Japan in 1910. But the mass immigration from Korea to Central Asia and China in 1910 was caused by the forced annexation of an undivided Korea by Japan after the Russia-Japan War. Now, Korea was under the complete imperial rule of Japan for at least 35 years. And the rule ended with the surrender of Imperial Japan. And on August 1945, the surrender was announced after a series of warnings of the atomic bomb, which all you heard, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So these Japanese cities on August 1945, they did that. Now, the Korea's liberation from Japan brought it under the trusteeship of the United States and the Soviet Union until the Korea would be ready to rule themselves or build their own administration, or you can say play the politics, especially in the international perspectives or international stage or international politics. So what happened after that? The Korea, this resulted as the United Korea was divided in two different zones. Now with its the partition, they have the 38 parallel line. That was the South Korea, which was occupied by the United States, and another part was controlled by the Soviet forces. Now, during the Japanese imperial rule, especially the Koreans, they migrated to Japan as a indentured labor, or you can say they employed as a laborers in the Japan by the government of Japan. Now, in the post-World War II, the immigrant Korea, they opted to stay back in their host country, especially those living in China and then Japan and other Central Asian countries. The war with the Japan and the partition of Korea, they led to personal and their personal safety and their job securities. So these migrants, they become a natural choice. This immigration become a natural choice for them, for the people of Korea. Now, what happened after that? The US came as a new act. The US came with a act which was USA Immigration Act in 1965 to benefit these South Korean people to seek the asylum or to immigrate from that country and to work in in their particular country. But on the other hand, Korea also introduced new policies that helped the Koreans move to the United States. And it increased the immigration and the diaspora settlement to the United States. That was very much visible in 1975 and 90s. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1990, they led a mass movement in that the Korean diaspora from Siberia, from the Central Asia, from China, was in 1992. But as a small diaspora in China, Japan, and other part of the world, the many Koreans, they continue their ties, especially with their homelands. But what happened after the Korea's government, which was now the Republic of Korea's government, They estimated that at least 75 lakh Koreans diaspora, they are spread across the countries, like approximately 190 countries globally. And seeking that the Korean citizens, those who were living outside the Korea for work, education, business, and for other purposes. But the most significant number of Korea, you can say the Koreans, are settled in the United States. That was followed by China and Japan. Now, these top three host countries, they maintain the top ranking since then. And they are growing the business, their ties between China and South Korea. And they recently immigrated, or you can say the immigration from Korea to China. But Japan has historically been a host for the Korean population. And there is also a table in your unit, so you can check how many Korean diaspora are ranking according to the country and numbers they are residing in these countries. Now again, because these diaspora is helping their home countries by giving a economic engagement. Because of economy, I think there is nothing possible for a country. So the Korean diaspora, they gave an engagement, especially on the primary level, as a business partner. And this is because these diasporic group, they are, from a very long time living in those countries and making a very critical source, especially for in this global talent world, or you can say they always have a potential investment even into that sectors. So in fact, the Korean government uses its abroad population to improve the country's economy. And now statistics, they alone shows that the Republic of Korea traded more with the countries and more significant ethnic Korean population. Especially the international initiative, which was taken by the World Korean Economic Conventions and Overseas Korean Trade Associations to foster these linkages and businesses and their networks, which is possibilities between Korea and their diasporas. Now in 2017, there are like more than 600 Koreans, small and the medium-sized businesses. They inked the agreement with the Korean new entrepreneurs, especially those who are living in abroad, to boost the country's economy. Now later, if you'll, because I don't know how much time I left, so I'm jumping onto the cultural perspective of this Korean diaspora. Especially in recent years, the Korean culture that has received a global welcome. In countries like USA, China, Japan, Canada, Vietnam, Russia, Indonesia, these Korean diaspora established the Korean cultural centers even. And these centers work as a facilitator of promoting their food, their music, their languages, and their art into the host countries especially. Now, since the Buddhist teachings also a historical affiliation, historical concept even for the migration. Now, the Buddhist teaching also practiced deeply, that was influenced into the Korean culture, and it has become a more secular in that way. That was followed by the Buddhist and non-Buddhist as well. The popular Korean dance, even the imu, jingzomyu, these kind of musics, even pansuri is very much popular these days, and the K-pop. So these also created a house structure even, which is like commonly that is found in the Korean localities, but now it is here in the host countries as well. Korean, they has also begun to witness the cross-cultural bond. The cross-cultural bonds in the advanced societies like the United States, and where the Korean Americans, they live in the sync with the other, or you can see the link with each other. Now come on to the another part, another country which is very much influenced by the diasporic in East Asia, that is Filipino. Although there is very little historical background, there very little research is happened on the Filipino diaspora. So whatever I have, I will just share with all of you, like keeping the history of the Filipino, because I didn't find out that much what happened into the Filipino diaspora people and what are their cultural influence in there. So the Filipino diaspora, their history that is begin from the colonial period, especially the Philippines, those were between the Philippines and Spain in the 16th century, and a country that was taken under the United States control. After the 5 long years of Spanish-American War in 1898 to 1902, and that resulted Spanish forces that lost the United States that took the control on the Philippines. But during the Spanish colonization, the local population immigrated from Philippines to Spain, Mexico, and other part of the Southeast Asia, especially Indonesia. The rule of the United States, especially in the Filipino, they controlled most of the population, and they also contributed in a sense, especially to the local population, to immigrated from Philippines to Spain and Mexico and other part of the South Asian countries. Now the rule of the United States, yes, the rule that was created by the United States at that time, the Philippines led an outlawed, or you can say a flow of immigrants to the United States. But within the decades, at least more than 98,000 Philippines, they migrated, especially in the US. They increased their number and their professional numbers, especially in these countries. And now the Filipino diaspora from the 1990s, that was a very important period because there was a sudden decline of Philippines population. The Filipino diaspora in 1990, they counted like at 2 million, and in last 3 decades it has reached like 5.4 million into 2020. But as a result, many people, those who opted to move abroad for employment, for education, for their business purposes, for marriages, or for any such reason, the Philippines, they have seen a sharp decline in their population growth. So in countries of 94 billion people, the government has a record fall in a population growth due to an increasing outward of migration or outward of migration. So in 1919, the Philippines population growth rate was only 2.5% of the total population. And even in 2019, now the growth rate even declined by 1.3%. And this estimate is reported by the World Bank, and this report came in 2021. And this sharp decline has caused the social and economic imbalance within the Philippines, and even the government that has its concern over the increasing the brain drain from the country. Yet the remittances also was at a setback for a home country by the overseas Philippines that has helped even in the economy. But these Philippines diaspora, they also have a very important aspect, that is women immigrants. There's a more women immigrants than men. These Philippine women, they migrated more into these countries. The Commission of the Filipino Overseas in 2019, they reported the sex ratio of the immigrant population that shooted like 10.7 for women in comparison to men. So women, they also played a very important role even to maintaining that professional connection between the countries. They also involved themselves not only the market sector, but in the professional nursing, the business. They were even the drivers, farmers. They also work for as a farmers. They were the managers, accountants. In every sector, they were there. So especially in the 10 years of the United States, they ranked the first in the hosting of the Filipinos immigrants who moved from Philippines to work into these sectors. Now, their economic contribution was also very much important for Philippine government, because World Bank report came in 2018, and they estimated that 34 billion USD, which is ranked globally after India and China and Mexico even, as a remittances receiving country. Now, again, I'm jumping into the cultural impact of the Filipino diaspora. That is a very big cross-cultural matrimonial ties. Although there we have seen the food culture, the religious culture, their social culture, but especially in the Philippines, they were culturally very diverse between the countries. And these immigrants, the Philippines globally, they have carried their cultural heritage along with them. And the cross-cultural matrimonial ties, especially in the United States, Canada, and other European countries, they have given a rise to the various hybrid culture, especially for the third and the fourth generation of the Philippines. And now this community, they has been trying to retain their homogeneous culture or the customs or their beliefs and their practices into the host country. And these Philippines are also very much fond of their music, their language, including the Spanish, their English language, and their own indigenous language. They also have a varied from like dance activities, the tinkling. This tinkling dance is also, performed several times in the Bollywood movies as well. So this religion wise as well, because they always carry their culture, their customs. This religion of the Philippines, that was a Christianity in majority, which was accounting at least 80%, which was followed by Islam, like 10%, and other culture as a 9%. But the Christmas, which we all know that it's celebrated in all over the world. And Christmas is the most significant celebration for Philippines, especially across the world. Now we have another diaspora, as I mentioned. There are, so how much time I left?
Around, total 5-6 minutes.
5 to 6 minutes. So, okay. I will directly, okay. Let me just talk about little bit on the Japanese diaspora, because Japanese diaspora, they also have a very rich history about the diaspora and their cultural beliefs and how they migrated. But there is a very specific name for that is Nikkei. They consider as a Nikkei people. Nikkei that was borrowed from the Japanese, referring to the people of Japanese ancestors. And I was just listening a very important lecture, and in that even this word Nikkei was used, and somebody will ask about that thing, like what is this? So it's like a tie. It's like a tie between the people of Japan, whether they coming from the Japanese ancestries or they are just living in the overseas with the new generation, like fourth generation, the fifth generation. But this term which often used broadly that describes the citizens, those living in abroad, like a local citizen. Now, historically, Japan always been in a trade. The Japanese traders were the first known group of people who traveled overseas in the 18th century. Now, there is also a period, that period is Meiji period in 1868 to 1912. And Japan government also promoted this, the immigration of unskilled labor to the United States and the Hawaii especially. And these laborers, they migrated to nearby countries. As a result, many Japanese, they were settled in the Americas, including Brazil, Cuba, Canada, Mexico, and other part of the world as well. Now, because we have very less time, so what is the economic contribution of these Nikkei people, or you can say the Japanese diaspora worldwide? That is a meager contribution of the Japanese economy. Now, the population, they've been away from their home from decades, but they are temporary as a diaspora, or you can say the migrant worker who spend part of their earning to their families back in Japan. And we also are very much aware from the Japanese culture that is everywhere, even into the restaurants, like their cuisines, sushi, for example. So, about the Vietnamese diaspora, they basically referred as a Viet Cui. And this definition of Viet Cui, especially from the local Vietnamese language that was translated by a traveler, those who are living in the overseas, unlike China, Japan, Vietnam, they does not have a long history of overseas immigration. But since Vietnam was a French colony for a long time, these two countries have a long history of migration as well. Now, Vietnam also resulted immigration from a dramatical change after a fall of a Saigon. Now, this Saigon, I think they're the migrants, they're coming from the well-educated, very rich families, those who were established the enterprises and the population enclaves like Orange Country, San Joe's, Seattle, the Hustons. In these, especially even the host country, they have a specific area there where they live. And initially, there were limits of Vietnamese refugees, those who were entering to the United States, and there was a tension even very much high that many saw them as a reminders of Vietnamese war, which was very much terrible at that time. But as a result of the refugee suffering, the United States lifted the prohibition of the Refugee Act of 1980s and the immigration of Vietnamese, which rose dramatically and embracing the people of the socio-economic classes. Now, in the as a victory of these wars and these policy changes, their contribution to the economy, these Vietnamese diaspora who's contributed to the home country, especially into the in 2020. The overseas Vietnamese, they invested at least 362 projects, even in foreign direct investment from the 27 countries. And these numbers and these reports are already referenced and given into the unit. So the total investment so far has been counted as a $1.6 billion from these projects. And from these diaspora who were giving the remittances or sending the remittances to the countries from to the Middle Eastern countries, to the Asian countries, they were also not very far. Okay. Now, what is the cultural contribution the Vietnamese diaspora gave? That is a very mixed East Asian culture. It is a reflection of Chinese culture as well, and it also have a culture of Korean. But its culture that is originated from the very ancient age, and its diaspora that was located in various countries in Europe, America, but with a very hybrid culture. And they also made a route to Vietnam. And this, what was that? There was the English culture, there was French culture, there was Spanish culture, the Chinese, Japanese, their languages and people, those who came into those countries. So they left the identity of their own culture, especially onto the Vietnamese. Now, these Vietnamese diaspora, they are carrying the same culture into the host country, and they are contributing and keeping that same mixed culture in the host country as well. Now, to conclude this, sir, I'll just take 2 more minutes to conclude this. Now, this East Asian diaspora also seen a very big downfall. The downfall, which was like comparison to the contribution of development of home to the host economies, but this downfall comes for an example that Japanese and the Philippines diaspora, they has led to a shortage of human resources even into the home countries. Now today, even Japan has the most significant number, like 20% of the population, which is above the age of 65 years. But there is a very recent study that suggested that every 3 people will be above from the 65 and 75 of that particular country comes from a Japanese workforce. Now these Japan, that was similarly, these Chinese diaspora also facing the challenge of loss of culture, their ethnic identity, the new generation, especially those young Chinese, they are going to the host countries, but they are losing their culture because they are too much influenced by the McDonaldization. So again, these kind of downfalls which are influencing or affecting, sorry, where they're affecting these diasporas. Now there is also a reverse immigration because of the shortage of labor even into the home countries, and there is also age factor, like I give you the example of Japan. So the immigration results are coming back even, and the Philippines immigrants, they also becoming facing a challenge uh, because the female population, and the female population as a migrant also face like several challenges. They are being raped, they are being tortured, they are not being worked in a good circumstances, and their like contracts are not given to them on a proper time, and there is no health facility even for them. So there are challenges even these diaspora, which is basically, you know, um, even facing by these diasporas. So now, similarly, we can say, although these countries, these diasporas, they are helping their host countries in developing their economy, their remittances, their industries, their industrial ties, but they are also facing challenges when where their lack of policy, where the government should work on that to help and to maintain these diasporas into the host countries. So I'll stop here and stop sharing my screen.
Any question quickly? Otherwise, we have already enclosed the next class.
Yes.
So you can always ask question to Dr. Sarita. I'll give you her contact number and contact email. So
Yeah.
if there is nothing, we'll go to the next class because we are already, we have to
Yeah.
manage time. So thank you, Dr. Sarita, for a very informative talk. And we'll be looking forward again to have you.
Yeah, sure. Pleasure always.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll talk to Sarita after the class, maybe tomorrow or the after.
Yeah, okay. Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Thank you. Next talk we have by Dr. Smita Tiwari. And this is a very important topic, diaspora in policy making. So you all know diaspora is one of the influential, community now. And she'll be talking on that. And she has done actually PhD work on diaspora policy from Jawaharlal Nehru University. And she also, did her job in various, capacity in various reputed organizations like Indian Council for World Affairs. Now she's working as a fellow in Nehru Memorial Museum, which is a very important think tank in India. And she's also General Secretary of GRFDT. And she is managing many things in her capacity and very active in diaspora research. So without taking much time, I pass on this to Dr. Smita. Smita, over to you. You can, just 1 minute, and yes, you can share your PPT.
Thank you, Dr. Sahu, for this kind introduction. Just a second, I'm sharing my screen.
Yes.
Is it visible?
Yes, visible. You have around maybe 30 to 35 minutes with that, because people are already they spend 1 hour, they may be impatient. So maybe okay. 35 minutes will be okay.
I'll try my best.
Okay.
Thank you very much to the organizers for giving me this opportunity and coming to this platform and engaging with the students. This is a pleasure for me. Coming to the topic, my topic is diaspora influences in policy making, which is MDI2, Block 2, Transnationalism and Politics of Citizenship. So, starting with diaspora influence in foreign policy making, we know and understand that diaspora has already become an essential component at global level and influencing or acting as an intermediary between nation and the globe, between one countries and at international level. And looking at their growing importance, even many policymakers of many countries are getting interested to engage them. They are already trying to adjust their policies. They are trying to alter and coming up with certain mechanism to engage with them. So it is already a significant topic. If we look that around 20 years ago, two decades ago, if I may say so, diaspora and migration studies were almost a marginalized studies. It was not considered as a mainstream, but at present times, at least, we see that it is already multidisciplinary subject and several research are being done from different angles, and it has come out as an mainstream subject, as an important subject. It has become an important feature of non-traditional security issues like migration, diaspora, climate change, and it all. It has covered the center stage. So starting with my learning objectives of this presentation, I hope I would be able to do justice and would make you understand diaspora and foreign policy, the theoretical understanding, and after that, we will look at concept, classification, and migration of Indian diaspora, where we look at the phases briefly. Then we will have look on diaspora policy, historical overview, how it started and how things developed till so far. And then India's new diaspora policy, what were the objectives behind it and principles. And then we'll look at the various dimensions of the policy. So let's start with the diaspora and foreign policy, theoretical understanding. That definition, in terms of definition, I will not go to various definitions. It has already been defined differently, variously through various people. I'll just pick up certain which may be relevant to the presentation today. For William Safran, the term diaspora comes out of a specific historical experience. It referred initially to the exile of Jews from their historic homeland and their dispersion throughout many lands, signifying as well as oppression and moral degradation implied by the dispersion. Safran also maintains that this diaspora is the segment of population who are living outside their homeland. And then Cohen is also there, who has agreed with the definition given by Safran and also added certain categories like victim diaspora, labor diaspora, imperial and cultural diaspora. So basically, what I mean to make you understand is that this classical definition usually involves a collective trauma. When we define diaspora in classical terms, there is a pain, there is a memory, nostalgia, and an imagination of a homeland and a desire or a belief that one day they will return to their homeland. So these are the very typical specific feature of a classical diaspora. But when we come to present times, we see that diaspora is no longer a sign of crisis. It has emerged to be a positive concept. As I just now discussed, that it started with a crisis. Usually earlier diaspora was not voluntary, started with unwillingness, starting with unwillingness. They were forced. It was a push factor that compelled them to leave one set of environment setup and enter to the another setup. So but now, over a period of time, even during the colonial time, we see that diaspora was not that voluntary. They were picked up and they were taken to various plantations, and their movement from one place to another place was due to either civil war started in their home country, or certain kind of pandemic or natural crisis emerged, and because of that they had to move from one place to another place. So but today we see that diaspora has evolved a lot and it has become a positive concept. People are migrating voluntarily, for the betterment of their life, and uh, they are choosing it, they are willing to do it for multiple reasons, they, for a higher education, for quality of life, whatever the reason may be. But now their migration is more voluntary. Eisenstein defines migration as a physical transition of an individual or group from one society to another. This transition usually involves abandoning one social setting and entering another and a different one. So we will look into the concept of diaspora and home. You know that home is always central to the concept of diaspora. Home is very, very crucial. But you know, one thing I would just like to mention here, that any migrant community does not automatically be called as diaspora. Because migration is a bigger umbrella term which includes various sub terms like refugee, exile, undocumented migrants, irregular migrants, or business migrants, short term migrants. There are several sub themes within this migration. But to be called as diaspora, it requires little more than just being a migrant. It requires a strong willingness to look back to your country of origin and cultivate a tie. If you have migrated from one place to another and you are not looking back to your country of origin and you are just happy at the place you have moved to, you may not be called as a diaspora. But to be called as diaspora, you have to look back. You have to cultivate certain ties. And this strong loyalty and allegiance towards a country of origin makes diaspora different from other migrant groups. And why this is important for today? Because this looking back and connecting with your root creates a kind of transition. It creates a kind of link which gradually become a transnational link, which we will further look. So I was talking that home, which is a central concept in diaspora, it is not a static term. Home is not a static term. It is as dynamic as diaspora itself. But home signifies different meaning to different group of people. For some people, home means identity, belongingness. It gives them strength. But for some other group of people, home, particularly those people who have been forcefully removed from one place and they have compelled to settle down on some other place, home is like memory. For them, it is a nostalgia, a feeling, a desire that they want to return back when everything get normalized. For certain other groups, home is like a unifying factor. Just by being having an imagination of home connects them. Like I would like to cite here Benedict Anderson's imagined political community, where he says that this is a community where people are not known to all the people of the community. People do not know every people of their community, but still they are very strongly connected and united with each other because they have a shared past, they have a common culture, common language, common food habits, and a desire to retain it all. So this is a unifying strength or unifying factor that diaspora takes from the home country. And also, like I would like to mention Safran, who gives a concept of myth of return, because I told you that those diaspora, which the classical diaspora, when they migrated from their root place to another place, they had this vision that one day they will come back to uh, their root place or country of origin. But now we see that people do migrate, they do keep in contact with their country of origin, but not necessarily they have this vision of returning back. They may just stay connected emotionally, or they may stay connected culturally, or they may in whatever manner stay connected with their country of origin, but returning home may not be in their agenda. Then there is a rise of new diaspora. We have seen that due to several factors, several ideas emerging post globalization uh, period, and there are new group of diaspora being emerged, which are little different from the classical in terms of their magnitude, terms of their dispersion, the way they are dispersed, getting dispersed all over the world. And also they are transforming informations, they're providing remittances to their country of origin, they are funding civil projects, they are lobbying for their political cause or election in their country of origin. So there are a lot of factors. The point is that do not they do not longer identify themselves as a victim diaspora. They are more successful, established entrepreneur diaspora. But however, there are certain security concerns also, because in new diaspora, we see that diaspora sometimes get involved in certain unwanted activities, and maybe transnational crimes or terrorism or separatism. They may fund or facilitate a separatism within a country. So they may get engaged with these kind of activities, which becomes a security concern for the country of origin. Now, we look and try to understand. We already know that diaspora has already become very strong force at international level, and it is playing very active non-state actor. But why countries are looking to their diaspora? What are their interests to look and engage with the diaspora? This is a very important question. As Eva Questergaard Nielsen mentions, that there are three main interests a country can have by engaging its diaspora. Number one is economic support. Economic support a country, because today's diaspora are very active economically, they are very successful, particularly those countries who have this successful diaspora. They may look towards diaspora for economic support in terms of foreign direct investment in their country. They may come up with certain policies to provide them some relaxation for this diasporic engagement or foreign direct investment in their country. They may liberalize some rules and regulations to engage them. And they may also look for the remittances, which is, in fact, India is one of the, India is the country which gets highest remittances from the diaspora. So, and for some countries, remittances constitute a bigger part of their GDP. So it is the economic support is one of the important reason why do country look to their diaspora. Then comes the political support. Why the country look and want to engage to their diaspora, because a country of origin wants a diaspora support in case of there are some international dispute. If country is having some international dispute, they would look towards its diaspora to provide some kind of support, or maybe channelize or generate opinion in their country of settlement in support of that dispute. However, it depends on the size of diaspora. If the size of diaspora really magnitude and matters, and they are in a capacity where they can influence their country of settlement and they can engage in some kind of lobbying, the country of origin definitely look for their political support. Then they would also like to engage with them to cultivate a positive ties with their country of settlement, like we saw in the case of India-US civil nuclear deal, where Indian diaspora played a very active and very supportive role for India, and they did all the lobbying, and because of that, the civil nuclear deal could become a possibility. So that is also one of the important aspects. Then creating a public opinion, because diaspora is a transnational network, and it is not only staying in one country but spread in many more countries, and they have their own diasporic network which is outside border of their country of origin. So country of origin look towards them to have that kind of political support from their entire diasporic network on a particular subject. And they would sometimes country of origin or some political parties look to diaspora for their funding, for their campaigning, or certain kind of political support which they can leverage at the time of election. So this is also one of the important aspect. Number three is social capital upgrading, which is again important. And under this social capital upgrading, diaspora can be involved to provide, like these two, three and fourth point is more or less overlapping, where diaspora provide knowledge. They transfer their information and know-how, knowledge and skills of technology. They transfer to the country of origin, which is a very important skill which we call brain circulation. Brain drain, brain gain, and then this is brain circulation, that what they have achieved, learned in their country of settlement, now they are trying to transferring it to the country of origin. So that is also one of the important. And then philanthropy, of course, which diaspora does at multiple level. Many times they do it to their home state, or the place where they are born and the place where they have received education, or sometimes they do on the cost basis if they want to do philanthropy for girls child, or for education, or for certain areas, wherever medical, wherever they are interested in. So diaspora philanthropy is also one of the important area which can help the weakest link within a country of origin. So definitely there are strong reasons for a country to look towards its diaspora, provided the diaspora is successful, skilled, and in a capacity where it can channelize its influencing power. Then just a second. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. Yeah. Now, why do how and why does a diaspora influence its country of origin? This is also a very important aspect to understand policy, that why and how diaspora affect its country of origin. So there are certain diasporic interest in country of origin, which is economic, political, and socio-cultural. But before that, diaspora have to have that willingness to practically engaged with the country of diaspora, because they have certain kind of connection, emotional, cultural, or whatever. But if they have strong will, they will be engaged in. They think that any policy within their country of origin may influence their other members of their family. So they want to stay engaged and stay connected with the development of that policy, and in any possible way, if they can contribute, they would definitely like to contribute. Secondly, if diaspora have greater stake in future foreign policy formulation, that how a country's foreign policy is growing up, if diaspora has a strong stake in that, diaspora definitely would like to stay connected and stay involved in those stages of foreign policy formulation, and they will definitely try to lobby at whichever level or position they can be. Then if they believe and consider that some policy is going to be detrimental to them, some policy may harm them at their country of settlement, or they may harm their kins and their loved ones within the country, they will definitely take interest in political policy making. But besides this, they will also be interested in economic rules and regulations, because they would definitely like to expand their business. They would like to make investment in their country of origin. They would like to do many other socio-cultural activities uh, where they can get engaged, like they can because when diaspora moves from their country of origin, one of the challenge for them is to retain their culture, to stay socially embedded in their social group, social structure. So for that purposes, they can organize several functions, the cultural festivals, they can come to their country of origin or take part, or they can organize it at their place, and just for the sake or for the order to retain the culture in its maximum purity form. So that's how they take interest. And further we'll look at the diasporic activity. In terms, see, diaspora, we know that diaspora is not monolithic group. It is very diverse, many a times very, very diverse, as Indian diaspora is. So their activity is also very different. Sometimes diasporic groups are very active, very vocal about their rights, about the political developments in their country of origin or their country of settlement. Sometimes they are passive and may not be as active, but then in certain conditions they show activeness. Then there is a silent diaspora. To understand this, I think we should look at this graph, where active members also become sometimes passive when they are interjected into international relations by not their own will, because sometimes they are forced into some situation where they may not become or show their activeness, but they become active uh, and influence foreign policy of their country of origin and settlement by their own willingness. But passive members, they remain usually passive, but when they are called up by the members of active leadership, they will show their activeness. Then there is silent diaspora. They are remain silent generally in normal positions. They will remain silent, but they will become active. They may become active at the time of crisis when they are called so. So, but again, their active, passive, and other activities depends on the degree of integration of diaspora in the country of settlement. This is one of the very important aspect. If the diaspora is not well integrated in their host country, they will definitely be more involved and active about their country of origins, political development or economic or socio-cultural, whatever, because they have this perception that they may or may not continue with in future, because they feel themselves insecure. So at one place they want this they seek that security from their country of origin. But usually it happens with the first and second generation of diaspora who look more strongly towards their country of origin. But we see third, fourth, and further generation of diaspora, they become more integrated to their host society. They've grown up in that culture, and they, for them, retaining their original culture or keeping ties with their country of origin becomes challenging because of the fact that they have grown there and they consider their home there. As I mentioned, that home is not a static concept and it is very fluid. So first and second generation think about their home as their country of origin, because the first generation has migrated and the second generation have heard a lot of stories, and many times they have also accompanied with their parents or their guardians, whosoever it is. But the third, fourth generation, usually they have grown up in the society and more strongly they identify themselves with their host society rather than the country of origin. So it's very fluid and subjective, many a times situation based. So now I'll talk about Indian diaspora. This is just a pie chart from source from Ministry of External Affairs, which shows that out of 32 million diaspora present in 210 countries, 58% of the diaspora is PIO, people of Indian origin, and 42% of them is not NRIs, non-resident Indians. So we see that India is having the largest, one of the largest diaspora in the world. And here, for the sake of understanding, because policy, Indian diaspora is very diverse, and for the sake of policy formulation, one size fits all doesn't apply to India. So we have to understand that whom do we call Indian diaspora? Who actually are the Indian diaspora? So Indian government have categorized Indian national overseas, whom we call popularly as non-resident Indians, and then PIOs. Uh, we will see that according to the Foreign Exchange Management Act, a non-resident Indian is a person who reside outside India but hold an Indian passport. He is employed abroad and carried out business or vocation outside India or settled abroad for any other purpose, indicating his intention to stay outside India for an uncertain period. And the Indian citizen working abroad with government agencies or international or regional organizations like United Nations and IDBI. And then officials of both state and central government and public sector enterprises posted abroad for on deputation. So holding an Indian passport is an important aspect for being categorized as NRIs, non-resident Indian. They are Indian, they are holding Indian passport, but they are physically present in some other countries. So they are still Indian. But then the other category is which we call persons of Indian origin. Persons of Indian origin, according to FEMA, is a person who at any time held an Indian passport and who was Indian at any time of his life, any time at his life. Then either his or his parents or grandparents were citizen of India by virtue of Constitution of Indian citizenship, and the person who is spouse of the person of Indian origin. It can be they can take Indian citizenship by the process of naturalization. So this two category of Indian diaspora, NRIs and PIOs, combinedly they have almost 32 million spread over 210 countries. And this is popularly called that the sun never sets on Indian diaspora, because they are so much spread all over the world that somewhere or the other, it is always morning or daytime. Then Indian migration phases and pattern. I will not go for the sake of time into too much detail. We know that broadly we categorized Indian migration into three phases, that is ancient, colonial, and post-colonial period. Ancient is not very relevant here, so I'm just skipping it. Colonial period, we know that migration took place under Britishers to the various plantations and various destinations from Fiji to Suriname, Gaya, Mauritius, and all these places where they took Indians to get them involved in their work. Then we have post-colonial immigration. After when India got independence, we saw the another phase of migration. It was different from the previous one because this is the migration which was more voluntary, which was based on the pull factor. Because earlier migration, I'm not talking about ancient. In ancient times, there were willing migration for the purpose of study or travel, but mainly colonial time, they were a kind of push factor. But in post-colonial immigration, we see that people have moved, particularly also they are skilled. They are highly skilled diasporas who have migrated to Western countries, and then there are semi-skilled or unskilled who have migrated to Gulf countries. So they post-colonial immigration to these two destinations primarily.
Nita, these slides are not moving. Actually, I was not attentive, but slides are not moving.
Is it moving now? Can you see?
You have to actually reshare again, maybe.
Okay, just a second.
Now it is moving. Now it is moving.
I should share my slide, no? Just a second.
Scroll down.
Is it fine?
It is one NRI only it is there, but you can just move on to other
Okay.
slides.
Then there are heterogeneous character of Indian diaspora, which is again Indian diaspora is diverse and heterogeneous in terms of their time of migration, in terms of their destination of where they have reached after migration, then their skilled and unskilled, then their diversification already as an Indian, because India is diversified in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of food habits. So wherever Indian diaspora moved, they have taken it all with them. So Indian diaspora is very heterogeneous in nature. I will come to the diaspora policy, and we start with the policy. In terms of policy, I will just give a brief that before independence, during the period of Indian national movement, there were greater support by Indian diaspora to the cause of Indian national movement. Are my slides visible, Dr. Sao? Or anyone, am I audible?
No, you are audible, but slides are not moving. Maybe some issue. You
Oh.
just move on, no problem.
Okay, fine. So before independence, they were very active and they supported the cause of Indian national movement. Like we know and remember the case of Lala Hardayal and formation of Gadar Party and their support for the Indian national movement. Similarly, there were several lawyers studying in Britain and they supported the cause of Indian national movement. Even the Indian leadership at that time, Gandhi ji, Nehru, they all supported diaspora's cause also. In their Congress annual sessions 1911 and 12 and 16 and so on, they raised the issues that were related to diaspora. They always pass some resolution that if diasporas are facing some kind of racial discrimination, if diaspora is being discriminated on the ground of on any ground, they would raise their voice. So there was a very strong bonding between the two, and it was like an umbilical cord. But as soon as India achieved independence, it was the moment of ecstasy for diaspora and for Indians also. However, we see that in case of India, their relationship with their diaspora ended at 1947. Why it happened so? It was because when Prime Minister Nehru took charge, and India as a country was already politically very divided, socially it was fragmented, and economically already it was deteriorated. So a huge task of nation building was there, which had to be taken by the leadership of India. And so Pandit Nehru decided that focused the citizenship of India in territorial terms. He thought that it would be feasible and desirable with this Herculean task of nation building, that they focus on the people within the territory, those who are residing within the Indian territory. And those who are residing in other countries, Nehru advised them to identify themselves with that country. He said that wherever you are settled, you look towards us, or we look towards you with emotional and cultural roots, but uh, any involvement in that country would be like interference in internal matter of a country. And Pandit Nehru, because he was a champion of anti-colonial, uh, empire, impartial imperialism, so he did not supported that idea that taking cause of diaspora and involving them in the our for policy making. So they advised them that to be settled down in their country of settlement, and they should identify themselves with those people instead of identifying themselves as Indian or looking towards us for anything. So this policy was called as policy of abandonment of Indian diaspora. This policy, it has its own justification. Whether it was right or wrong, it is another point of debate which may take another time. But this policy of abandonment was started because India got engaged in its nation building task, and also Pandit Nehru supported the cause of anti-colonial as a concept, and stop and not supporting the idea of interference into another country's internal matter. And he considered diaspora as an internal matter of another country. So Indian overseas face several crises during those period of time. We know that Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, Fiji, or Ceylon, Burma, there many places Indian faced discrimination. They were thrown out, like Idi Amin in Uganda. It was believed that Indians are taking all jobs of blacks in African countries. They faced persecution. They were compelled to leave the place. However, they looked to India and they asked for some help, but India's position was that it can only broadly provide, like, in the broader umbrella of anti-imperialism or anti-colonialism, it can raise its voice, but not particularly for the cause of diaspora. Like in case if we see that Sri Lanka also, when the Ceylonese came with the Sinhalese citizenship law, where according to that law, many Indian Tamils who had settled in Sri Lanka were going to be de they were just going out of the orbit of citizenship. However, India just did not provide that relief, and in the Indian leadership were in talk with the Sri Lankan leadership. However, nothing fruitful could come out. In Burma, same thing happened, and India's response was little lukewarm, not very strong in support of diaspora. However, I see that with the liberalization of Indian economy, uh, in 1991, India's economy got liberalized due to several factors, which is already known. And that time it was believed that Indian diaspora can be a factor. They can involved in uplifting the Indian economy, and then several bonds were made available, and it was sold to diaspora community, and they came literally to help India. But at that time, if we try to understand, 1991 was a different time from 1947, because 1947 India started building itself, and there was lack of direction, there was lack of where and how to start, where to move. But till 1991 India was fairly stabilized, particularly in comparison to other South Asian countries where democracy could not even take off as a governing module. Many of them went through this uh, army coup and another militia intervention in this democratic environment. But in case of India, at least Indians sustained this democratic structure until 1991. It definitely deteriorated in terms of economy, but other international, there were also changes in international environment. There was 1991 was end of Cold War, and the two hostile countries now their position became not completely redundant, but it was not as active as it used to be in Cold War period. Also, the process of globalization started with a fast pace and trying to spread its wings as ever as possible. So there were certain changes at the international level, there were certain changes within Indian within Indian economy, and besides that also the profile of Indian diaspora changed. The profile raised from victim to entrepreneur. Earlier the diaspora which looked towards India always for help, always for some kind of support. Now that diaspora have become successful, skilled, and entrepreneur, and somewhere politically active also in their country of settlement. So all these collectively give an impetus to the government of India to think in terms of involving diaspora. And also because of some colonial mindset, earlier it was believed during this first phase where diaspora was abandoned, that since they have moved outside country, they are not loyal. It was just a colonial mindset that it was believed that they have left their motherland, they are living a lavish life in very luxury in foreign countries, so they are not loyal to the country. So it was also a reason why they were not involved, not at policy level but at societal level. But till 1991 this concept was also getting shedding gradually, and now their success, their achievements, their raised profile, their political, their capacity to influence policy, it all collectively compel the Indian policy makers as well as India as a society to look towards diaspora. And so in 1991, NDA 1 and UPA 1 and 2 till 2014, there are several new steps and new initiatives were taken to involve diaspora into India's growth story. Couple of them initiatives taken by the government of India: Constitution of LM Singhvi Committee, which was aimed at mapping the Indian diaspora, number one, because before that the size of Indian diaspora, where, how much, where, and which category, it was not known that specifically. But LM Singhvi committee did a wonderful job by at least mapping the numbers of diaspora. So at least we have some knowledge that how much population India we have in which country, and they came up with the recommendation, the basis that how to involve them, creation of a Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs, and then celebration of Pravasi Bharati Divas (PBD) was an important milestone to engage them, to celebrate their success, and to engage them in India's development. And then OCI scheme, Overseas Citizenship of India. Earlier in 1999, PIO card was provided to the persons of Indian origin, which already provided them a lot of facilities, as they can stay till 15 years without visa. I mean, they do not need to renew the visa. They have some relaxations in the tax and tax benefits, but then they come with the OCI because of the demand for dual citizenship. This OCI was a very good stroke by government, in terms that it gives persons of Indian origin all the equal status as per Indian resident, except political rights. That means OCI is economic rights plus social rights minus political rights. So here they have all these benefits what an Indian is having. They can buy any land, any property, except the agricultural land and uh, uh, but they have all the social rights. They can do whatever they like. They have a lifelong visa. They do not need to apply for visa. Whenever they can come, they can go. There is no time limit. But then they are barred from taking active political role. They cannot contest election. They cannot vote in an election. But indirectly, definitely, they do lobbying, they do funding, and it all. But active participation, active political participation, government consciously did not allow, because Indian political system, Indian political culture itself is a very complex phenomena. And then probably the government was not willing to introduce or engage a more complexity to it. Then there is diaspora knowledge network for diaspora population to get connected and know about each other. It is a sort of brain circulation initiative. Know India program, specifically aimed to the population who are second, third, and fourth generation. Then there are scholarships, various scholarships program for diaspora children to come India, to know India, stay here, and then continue their study. There are various bilateral security agreements with the countries, particularly Gulf countries, where Indians work as unskilled, semi-skilled, and skilled. So there are a lot of agreements. Then there were MOUs with Doordarshan and ICCR to spread awareness and to spread the government policies to these population, diaspora population. So a lot of initiatives were taken by the government UPA till UPA 2. Then under Modi government, this diaspora policy got a further boost, in terms of what was the difference is that the concept of diaspora got deterritorial. The concept of citizenship or nationalism got deterritorialized. Earlier, those living within the Indian territory were considered Indian nationals, and but now even those who identify themselves as Indian, who have spirit of Indianness, who look to the country of origin and wants to stay connected, they all become a greater national they become a part of Indian national. Here we need to understand that state and nations are two different things. Where for state, territory is important. For nation, it goes even beyond territory. So the concept of diaspora got deterritorialized, and we saw that several other initiatives in terms of business and cultural engagement started under Modi government. And then responses to during the crisis, various evacuation programs. Recently, I can cite this evacuation from Sudan, and before that from Kuwait and Oman, and various other places wherever the crisis took place. And also during the time of pandemic, how the initiatives were taken to support diaspora was specifically, it shows that basically during the time of pandemic, it was understood that it is not always diaspora who will contribute to the growth of India, but the government should also be there at their at their time of crisis, because of their raised profile. Always it is expected from diaspora to come and to contribute in India's growth story, but government government's response to the crisis of diaspora has always been lukewarm or less responsive. But during all this pandemic and crisis period, we witnessed that uh, initiatives have been made by government, though not adequate. However, some start has been done. Then diaspora is looked as a soft power and strategic asset. We know that diaspora is a soft power. Soft power is a very important concept in international relation, where it is opposite of hard power like war, gun, or economy. It is a soft power which touches the culture, which influences the people's lifestyle, like food or the cinema or the culture or the religion. So India's soft power, it is not that India's soft power was not there earlier, but the focus has dramatically shifted on soft power. Like Buddhism, India is the origin place of Buddhism, and it has spread in many Southeast Asian countries. So it is being focused and now channelized, and now it is being shown as to create a connect with Southeast Asia. The soft power is being used. Then Indian cinema, the Indian literature, the Indian food. There are many things which are being highlighted to through diaspora to make India visible, uh, to get connected with the other part of the world, to expand the network of its network. And then strategic asset, diaspora is also a strategic asset, particularly those diaspora who is successful, who can come and bail out in the time of crisis its country. But definitely on the opposite of it, there are diaspora who are considered as liability, who may not contribute to your growth or success, but who may look towards you to their crisis, who may look towards you to bail them out, to support them, to provide some kind of assistance to them in their time of crisis. But if the point is that if government only look towards strategic diaspora or successful diaspora and ignore this uh, uh, liability diaspora, they may get alienated. They may not retain their feeling of Indianness for, because of this reason. So
Sarita, my power will be off now, so you conclude whenever.
yeah, just 2 minutes, Dr. Sahu, 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay,
So
okay.
I'm just giving you that diaspora participation is focused on numerous collaborative projects and programs. I'll just show you this Indian policy for diaspora engagement. I have here it is listed out some actions and then status of Indian policy, how flexible laws are there in terms of citizenship. Since India does not allow dual citizenship, it has provided overseas citizenship in India, which is not exactly equivalent to dual citizenship, but some provision of it they are getting in terms of benefit. Political rights and privileges NRIs are getting, and um, then property rights, then incentives to tax and portable benefits. These are the things which I have listed out, and I'm not going to read it all for the sake of time. So as a factor, diaspora as a factor in foreign policy making, there are some points that I have listed out by Milton J. Isman. Uh, how diaspora tries to attempt influence countries' foreign policy, and they may seek their home government protection. They support their strategic and economic objectives, and they may contribute the homeland growth story. There are several aspects of diaspora being a factor in the foreign policy. And then challenges of diaspora engagement. Definitely engaging diaspora community is not an easy task. There are a lot of things, several impediments comes sometimes at policy level, because many times announcement of policy is faster than the implication. It takes times, it takes years. Once announcement have been made, but the implementation is taking years and years and not being materialized actually. So how best to identify and incorporate priorities of agenda, diasporas in established development strategies, how to create trust among stakeholders, how to establish successful working partnership, and how to incorporate diaspora effectively, that need to be charted out, very, that has to be crafted very carefully. And some recommendations are that we should develop a sound methodology for diaspora mapping. It is very, very important, since any law depends on the information, and lack of information will lead to lack of policy. So diaspora mapping is extremely important. Apply multiple channels of outreach, ensure more affordable access to legal status in host countries, lower visa cost, a diversified approach in policy making, where one size fits all will not be applicable in cases of India, and then organize the work of different stakeholder and design financial instrument to attract diaspora. So that's all for today. Thank you very much, Dr. Sahu, and thank you others. Dr. Sahu's, it seems that Dr. Sahu's is he has got a power off. So on behalf of him, I would like to not prevented by environment. Yes, yes, I understand. I see some questions. There are definitely some lacunas in the policy. There are definitely some shortcomings, and we can always discuss that this policy is lacking in some respect or other. That I completely agree with you, because what are the other questions? Thank you very much. I would like to thank on behalf of Dr. Sahu, since his power has gone off. So thank you very much, those who are present here. That's true. That's true. Access justice mechanism not to migrant workers. In fact, migrants are such a vulnerable within a country. The migrants who are within their country, within their land, within their people, with their people, they are not getting justice. And those who have moved out, I think their situation is more complex. And in terms of policy making, I think government is still figuring out, charting out, or they are yet to reach to that, I think, to provide justice mechanism. And also justice is like, which context justice we are talking about. There are a lot of things that can fall in this category. Like if they, like during the time of pandemic, when they came back home and they did not get their salary there, they did not get money, this is also injustice. But then how to figure out which legal agency to reach out to solve these problems, I think these are very uh, these are the tasks that has to be done very strong crafting of laws, and also identifying the mechanism, identifying the institution to whom, with whom to engage. Wage theft issues, yes, you rightly mentioned it, which was very prevalent within the country also. It is not only that who are coming from Gulf and other countries. Within the country also, we saw that those who migrated from Delhi and Mumbai and other big cities, they suffered this wage theft. So just it is difficult situation, and definitely government should think of them and come up with certain substantive in this regard. I completely agree with you. So thank you. Choose to circulate, decrease minimum referral wages to circulars. And yes, okay, fine. Thank you very much, Swadeshji, for your observation. And yeah, I understand. I am on the same page as you are. And in fact, what we have witnessed during this pandemic was heartbreaking. So I completely agree with you. And I'm thankful to you that you gave your opinion in this regard. So thank you very much. And thank you. So we two of us or three we are left. So yeah, Dr. Sahu messaged me. I'll just end the session on behalf of.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.